What's up, YouTube? And it's finally college football season, which means no more hypotheticals. We are getting some games started. Virginia will kick off against Richmond. Before we get going with breaking down some big headlines from Tony Elliott's press conference on Tuesday, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to this channel, like this video, and click on the bell so that you're notified whenever there's new videos. With the season coming ahead, expect a lot more coverage right here on this YouTube channel. So with that, let's get started.
Well, I feel like because of the addition of the grad transfers, with the progress of the offensive line, I think we're probably a little bit ahead of what I was expecting. But now they got to turn it into performance, and that's what I told them earlier this week, that this game is not about potential; it's about performance. So we got to go out and we got to perform on Saturday.
That was Virginia head coach Tony Elliott, who held his first press conference ahead of a game on Tuesday. Welcome to a new episode of the Good O Podcast. I'm Jackie Franchuli for Wahoo's 24/7. And you heard from Tony Elliott. He says this team is ahead of what he expected prior to that first game. Virginia will kick off its season against Richmond on Saturday at Scott Stadium. And Elliott, like I said, held his press conference on Tuesday, kicking off the Elliott era full throttle this week. So Elliott spoke to the media for about 25 minutes in his first pregame press conference. So big news coming out of it was obviously the first depth chart that Virginia released. So let's take a look at the depth chart, because that's where a lot of the news came from. This was our first opportunity to see where those position battles ended up before that first game. Obviously, if you look at the depth chart, you're going to see a few guys not mentioned on there that maybe some of us expected, like Devin Chandler and Demick Starlings are not in the wide receiver too deep. Sean Moore and Luke Wentz are in that too deep. Obviously, the likely personnels of Lavelle Davis, Keaton Thompson, Billy Kemp, Dontavius Wicks, those guys did make it, and we expected those guys to make it. So in the other key group that everyone wanted to know is who's those starting offensive linemen. And when you look at Virginia's starting offensive linemen, you notice that these are the same guys that lined up with the ones towards the end of last week during practice. If you were a subscriber to Wahoo's 24/7, you saw that we were seeing this lineup quite frequently in the last open practices that they had with the media. At left tackle is first-year lineman Mikhail Boley. He's replacing Jonathan Leach, who is not available for this game. Then at left guard is John Paul Flores, the grad transfer coming in from Dartmouth. At center is Ty Furnish. Honestly, this was expected. He was the most consistent guy in the O-line during fall camp. When others were coming in and out and rotating, he was the one that kind of was cemented in that position. So that is not surprising at all. Right guard is Derek Devine, and at right tackle is Logan Taylor. I know some of you have asked me why Noah Josie was not among those on the first team. And what I have said repeatedly is that Noah Josie is seen as a guard. So I understand why he's behind John Paul Flores. So with Mikhail Boley, I think what you're seeing is a guy who earned his position. And actually, we asked Tony Elliott what he's seen from Mikhail Boley. And honestly, even Brennan Armstrong said that he was been impressed by Boley. So let's actually hear from both of them. I asked Brennan Armstrong his thoughts on the offensive line and on Boley earning his starting lineup. So here it is.
I'm right with Coach E. You never know how those guys are going to adapt, and, they've gotten a lot of reps. The big thing for us was, trying to get a solid five out there, consistently playing with each other and, building that chemistry. And Mikhail's out there right now, and he's doing a great job. I remember Coach E challenged him in practice yesterday. You ain't no freshman anymore. You're out here playing, and apparently this should have been one of your dreams, coming in and starting as a freshman. You've got the opportunity to do it. And so, for Mikhail, just taking advantage of it. He's probably busy with classes, being a first year, but, we also got to get football and, get extra time in with football. So that was a big point for us. Coach E too, just talking with a lot of guys, like, I know classes are going, but you got to find time for more football.
Him to even be in a position to be the next guy up. He comes from a pedigree. His dad was a college football player, played in the NFL, so he has that background. He came in with good size. Still could improve from a strength standpoint, but he has the functional strength, and he's big, he's athletic, and it didn't seem to overwhelm him, which allowed him to be able to perform, to give us the confidence to say, you know what, if Leach is down for the game, then he's going to be the first one to run out there. So I'm excited for him and his opportunity, and Jim let me know that this is the first freshman tackle that's started since a really good one started as a true freshman. So not going to put that on him, but that's a special accomplishment to be in that situation.
Now, to clarify what Tony Elliott just said, this is going to be the first true freshman to start an opener since DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Obviously, Mark Moses and Eric Smith were starting towards the end of their respective freshman years. I believe Eric Smith was about halfway through that season where he started for Virginia. So this is the first time a true freshman is starting in this season opener since Ferguson. So this is a big deal. Mikhail struggled a little bit with an injury early on at fall camp, but then made his way in that starting lineup. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. It's a good game to see how this offensive line handles Richmond. So that was the biggest news. And obviously, when you look at this offensive line, a lot of the guys are saying that they're confident in this group. Brennan Armstrong just said that he thinks this O-line is ahead of where they expected. And that's something that Elliott said as well. And I think one of the biggest position battles that we saw was at center, but ended up not being such a big battle. And Elliott said during his press conference that they honestly thought Justice Johnson was going to be their guy at center, and they were pushing Justice to that role. But then Ty Furnish kind of cemented that position in fall and kind of took it himself. And they realized that Justice might be a better fit at guard. So right now, Justice is backing up Ty Furnish, but he also says that they're working John Paul Flores at center to see as a backup. And we actually saw that during last week's practice when John Paul Flores was taking reps with the ones when Ty Furnish wasn't at practice. So we've seen that they are, if this scenario is different, and imagine if Jonathan Leach is there, it looks like John Paul, maybe Noah Josie goes in at guard and John Paul Flores will move to center. So you can kind of see what the ones and the twos might look like if, Jonathan Leach is back, or what happens if Ty Furnish can't go. Then you have Flores at center, Noah Josie at guard, and Jonathan Leach at tackle. So you can see the moving pieces of what the line will look like if certain things were to happen. And when you look at Ty Furnish's progression, I know a lot of people have talked about how a little bit he might be undersized, but he has shown development, and the staff feels like he's gotten stronger and is prepared for that role this season. And Brennan has been a huge fan of what Furnish has done. And obviously, if you want one guy on your team to be happy with a center, you want it to be the quarterback. Here's what Brennan had to say about Ty Furnish.
As made tremendous jumps compared to what we actually thought, or how we were going to expect things would go. Especially with Ty, Ty's a smart player. You got to have your center to be smart. Me and him have started developing, a really good communication with just protection calls and things like that. What he's saying, what I'm saying, and just the cadence. So he's got to be, we're able to do different things with our cadences. He's a smart dude, and he's actually became a long way. And I'm excited. And also just under center snaps, we're working on those too. So we've got to know each other pretty well. Yeah.
So that is your first team O-line for the game against Richmond. So what other position battles did we witness during fall camp? And we kind of get a better idea what went on at tight end. We kind of figured it was going to be Grant Mish and Sackett Wood. This kind of confirms it, that there are the 1 and 2 at that position. And then again at running back, although Mike Collins has been challenged a lot in the fall camp, and there might have been some indication that he might be able to get first team on the depth chart. Paris Jones was the overwhelming guy that the staff said was, if they was name a day, they would say Paris Jones would be it. Paris Jones cemented that first slot. And again, the staff isn't saying that Mike Hollins won't get any handoffs here or won't have chance to run the ball. They've been saying that they want to run the ball by committee. So you're going to see Mike Hollins in the game. We've been seeing that whenever we had the opportunity to watch even a scrimmage, Mike Hollins was able to get the ball. So I expect Paris Jones and Mike Hollins to feature against Richmond. And when Ronnie Walker is back, I expect Ronnie Walker to finish, to also add his runs to the running game as well. So it'll be interesting to see actually when Ronnie Walker is healthy, because he was the one that the Virginia staff was the most excited about. See how those reps are divvied up between those three. But obviously right now it looks like Paris Jones is 1, Mike Hollins is 2. So we broke down all the big news from the offensive side of the ball. That was kind of the big storyline from Tony Elliott's press conference. But there's actually some big news on the defensive side. So after the break, we'll break down the defensive side of the ball and what the depth chart looks there. So we'll be back in just a few seconds to break down that side of the ball.
We got a chip on our shoulder big time, and we got something that we want to prove, and we just want to go out there and play together and play confident with each other. But at the end of the day, we know where we stand, and we still want to go out there and be a good defense, which we know we can do.
That was defensive back Darrius Bratton for Virginia. He's playing the field safety role on John Radzicki's defense. Probably one of the most important roles on Coach Rudd's defense. Hi, I'm Jack Frinchuli for Wireless 24/7, and we're back breaking down the biggest headlines from Tony Elliott's first pre-game press conference of his career as Virginia's head coach. So we talked a lot about what the offensive depth chart looks like, and you heard from Bratton, the defense is playing with chip on their shoulders. But how many of those guys from last season are in the two deep this season? So let's take a look at the depth chart on the defensive side of the ball. So again, a lot of the things that we're seeing on the depth chart wasn't remarkable, because we were seeing this during fall camp, especially, from the first team defensive line. When you see Cam Butler during with the ones, you see Jameer Carter with the ones, you see Aaron Famui with the ones, and you see Chico Bennett with the ones. That was something that we expected. In the twos, even that wasn't mind-blowing. We expected a lot of these guys like Paul Keir, Devontae Davis, although Ola is also, and Ola Anguloe is also in that 2 deep. It's Devontae Davis or him. So that is new. That's something that we didn't expect as much. I didn't see him much in the 2 deep when the media was available, but we did see Devontae Davis when he was healthy out there. You have him there. Ben Smiley on the 2 deep. I would be really shocked if he wasn't there, considering all the praise he was getting from this staff. And then Jack Camper at Bandit. Now, that one was a little surprising, considering that we saw Mike Green a lot in that position. But at the same time, not as surprising, because Jack Camper was also dealing with a injury early on in fall camp. He was wearing a green jersey in certain those camps. And we saw him come in and rotate more and more and more on the D-line. So it's not too surprising when you consider that they were really high on the potential of Jack Camper, the transfer coming in from Michigan State. So I could see that this was a possibility. So although many expected Mike Green at that position, it doesn't shock me that Jack Camper got in the 2 deep. So that is your defensive line. When you look at the linebacker group, you obviously expect Nick Jackson at Mike, but you also expected Josh Ahern at the will linebacker spot. And we find James Jackson in that position. Now, the reason why Josh Ahern is behind Nick Jackson and not at the will side by side with Nick Jackson is because he has to sit out the first half against Richmond. Why does he have to sit out the first half against Richmond? Because he got a targeting call against Virginia Tech last season. He wasn't able to sit out the game in the bowl game, so he has to sit out the first half of this game. The ACC officials in the office gave that decision to Virginia just recently. So that's why Josh Ahern is not number one at the will position. So James Jackson, a guy that has received a lot of praise, is at that number one position at will, followed by Hunter Stewart. And then in the second, in the two deep, in the will, it's Hunter Stewart or Deshaun Perry. Now, you guys heard me have my spiel about Deshaun Perry last season, especially when I always voiced that he was playing out of position. Will position is his natural position. So it doesn't shock me that he has moved up the depth chart. And I would not be shocked if he is going to feature more heavily this season. I could see Deshaun Perry being one of those linebackers to rotate in several times for Virginia. So he is one that will feature this year. And then when you look at the secondary, again, most of these names are names that we already figured would come in for Virginia. Fincherl Cypress, Anthony Johnson, Darrius Bratton, Lex Long, and Jonas Sanker are your number ones. And then your twos are Elijah Gaines, Jalen Baker, Chase Chalmers, Donovan Johnson, and Antonio Clary. Now, honestly, in that strong safety spot, that is probably the one that jumps out at you because you have Sanker over Clary. Now, Clary has been dealing with a shoulder injury for the last 2 weeks, which is why most of the time when we were available to watch practice, he was wearing a green jersey. So that means no contact. So they weren't able to evaluate where he is. And, at the same time, this is Richmond. So you don't want to push guys if they're not ready to come back. So he is on the two deep. That's going to be an interesting position battle moving forward. It looks like the staff is also high on Sanker and his ability. He had a shoulder injury in the first half of fall camp, while Clary had a shoulder injury towards the second half of fall camp. And I expect there's going to be some movement in the secondary. It's a group that is going to have 5 guys on the field. So I expect some rotation there. They're going to want to have some guys specialize in certain positions, but if something's not working, I imagine there's going to be some rotation here. So that is one position that we're going to have to take a look at as the season progresses, because this is obviously the biggest part of Coach Rudd's defense that is different for this team is how the secondary looks. So it'll be interesting to see how they adapt and how the Virginia staff adapts moving forward on their personnel. So this was the biggest story from Tony Elliott's takeaway. Obviously, there was a lot of conversation about his first game as a head coach, a first game at Virginia, talking about the fan experience. Obviously, they're bringing back the Wahoo Walk. That's something that they want to have more fan engagement coming in. And even a lot of the players were discussing how they're expecting a lot more buzz in the year. There's more buildup. There's more excitement. There's a new head coach in town. A lot more expectations from the year because there's a lot of returners. When you look at the offense, and I named quite a number of returners from last year of that record-breaking offense, there's a lot of buzz around that. On the defensive side, there's hope and expectation that this defense is better than it was last year. And if we look at the talent level, we should expect some differences. If you look at the talent level, you look at how they were able to reinforce the defensive line. If from earlier podcasts, you know that I'm really high on that defensive front. And you see the two deep, you can see why I'm a little high on this defensive front. And Chico Bennett said he wanted to bring chaos this year. That's the type of energy that the defense lacked mostly last year. They didn't give that pressure up front that was needed, which is why a lot of things spiraled out of control. When you're not pushing up front, you're leaving a lot for your secondary to handle. If you're not pressuring the quarterback, you're causing some issues down the way. So there's going to be some interesting notes to follow in Richmond, how things look. But those are the biggest takeaways. And like I said, this is the first home game for Virginia under Tony Elliott. And there's a lot of buzz around the program. That's something that the players were talking about. And they hope for fans to show up. That was one thing they said. Obviously, with COVID and the pandemic, there hasn't been a lot of fans in the stands. And Virginia's had a pretty decent record at home at Scott Stadium the last few years under Bronco. Although they didn't have the best records on the road, under Bronco Mendenhall's tenure, they made Scott Stadium a tough place to play. So that is something that they hope to continue. And actually, that was the one thing they all discussed was what they hope for the first home game of the season, their expectation for the crowd. but also their expectation themselves. Darrius Bratton and Brennan Armstrong are obviously two veterans on this team coming this year. This will be their last year in Virginia colors. They're also the group, the seniors, the veterans that will kind of start Tony Elliott's tenure. So they want to leave a mark. They want to help Tony Elliott move forward. So here is Elliott, Bratton, and Armstrong talking about the importance of home field advantage and why they need to start well with Tony Elliott's tenure.
Before you can go on the road and consider yourself a road warrior, I mean, you got to defend your home turf, and you got to take pride in that, and that's where it starts. And then also, you know, you have a responsibility of those that came before you to defend the home turf. So that's where it starts, and I believe that at Scott Stadium we can create, you know, the most difficult place for other teams to play in the ACC. I've seen just in brief glimpses going out there with the first years, the class of 26, and the amount of noise that they made, just themselves, lets you know that we can create an environment in Scott Stadium that is a lot of fun for the guys, that just fuels that desire to defend it, but then also makes it a difficult place for opponents to come in. And so it starts with defending your home turf before you can be ready to go on the road and be victorious.
I mean, there's a lot of buzz around our team with Coach E, just the team coming back, most of the guys coming back. We're going to find out, and then I can tell you after that. Say we want more noise, want more people or not. But I really, truly do think that a lot of people are going to be coming out. I think they're excited for us.
Build-up is real important for us. We feel the build-up and excitement for our defense and for the whole team. And it's just very exciting for our team, and we're just ready to go out to play the first game.
The seniors sat down and just talked about team goals. Like, bottom line, first game, win. We have multiple goals throughout, but our first goal as a team, focus on this first game, win it. You know, like, that's a great start to the season, great start to, you know, Coach Elliott's career here. I mean, there's no other option besides win the game.
What a way to end this episode. I don't think I could have said it better myself. Brennan Armstrong with you just have to go out there and win. That's the only option they have to start Tony Elliott's tenure right in Charlottesville. So, like I said in earlier episodes, our podcast schedule is going to adjust to the season. As you can see, on Wednesdays, we will have a recap of Tony Elliott's press conference every Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we will have a game preview, so more specific game preview looking ahead to the next opponent. So in this case, Richmond on Thursday. So we will have a guest for tomorrow's episode to break down the game. And then we will have a third episode available on Monday morning where we will be breaking down the previous game and what worked, what didn't work, and what are the expectations moving forward. So when we don't have a midweek game, because obviously that will adjust a little bit for Friday and Thursday night games or against Syracuse and Georgia Tech, respectively, the scheduled podcast episode will be Wednesday, Tony Elliott recap. Then it'll be Thursday game preview, and then Monday game recap talking about the previous games. And then we'll also have bonus episodes here and there. If there's a big recruiting weekend we want to highlight, we will bring in a recruiting analyst. We also break down that. If there's breaking news, we'll have breaking news podcasts. We'll also have those features like for the Love of the Game series. Those will still continue, but those won't have a fixed day. So if you like what you're hearing, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to our podcast for wherever you listen to your episodes. And why don't you go ahead and head over to Spotify and Apple and rate us and leave us a review. I would really appreciate it. And again, we will see you right back here on Thursday with a game preview to Richmond. So for right now, I hope you guys have a good rest to your Wednesday.